Welcome back to the Wedding Capture Co, a podcast for wedding photographers and videographers, hosted by myself, Tom, and my good pal Chris.
Hello.
In this episode, we talk all about expectations. The expectations that our brands give out, the expectations we put on ourselves, and the expectations that also our clients have of the services that we deliver. So we are also going to play a drinking game throughout this episode. So every time that you say expectations, you have to take a shot. So it may be a really, really dangerous episode for some of you out there. And we dive into all the ways...
Please don't play that in the car.
all the ways that you can set expectations, all the ways that we set expectations from our pre-calls, our post-calls, and there's even a cheeky plug for Chris's contract in there as well, which is the ultimate expectation. Well, I don't think we really need to do a build-up because we kind of teased it enough last time, didn't we, what we're going to do? Like
we did, yeah.
We set the expectation, as it were, didn't we?
We accidentally set the expectation.
And we probably got into the weeds a little bit of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
A couple of times in our last episode. So if you are long-time listeners and you listened to the last episode that we did and got through the holiday chat and the coda chat, there was also a little bit in there about what today's about.
I think we had it in our mind after writing the notes about setting expectations, and as we were going through some of the things that we had to talk about last episode, it kind of linked back to this one. So worth listening to the last episode. Is mostly sort of a catch up and a little bit about coda, but this one's going to be much more in depth into something which we've had on our list of episodes and things to talk about for a while, because both of us believe that setting expectations I think it's quite underrated. It's not something that I see covered many times in other podcasts or workshops. It's a huge
topic as well. I think we'll try and keep it not to try and make it our longest episode yet, but I think it really is one of those things which kind of, it touches into so many parts of what we do, or the better that you are at this, kind of the less that you have to do in other areas.
I think this is obviously podcasts are pretty short, right? So you could spend the whole day talking about like this kind of thing and why it's important. But essentially, it all comes down, how it finishes comes down to how it starts.
Yes. Yeah.
And and therefore how the client exits your experience is all down to your expectation that you set versus the final result you give them. Yeah,
and there is a really, really fine line, I think. I don't want to kind of jump to the kind of the summary conclusions before we've even started.
Yeah.
But there is such a balance between setting expectations so that you don't fail people's expectations. Yes. But at the same time, there is also something about taking people on a journey that they never expected. So above and beyond their expectations,
100%,
which that makes it really positive, rather than not setting any expectations with them so they don't know where to go.
Yeah, it's that balance of setting the bar high enough that they feel like they're getting
they know that they want it, or
they want
know
to
the value
invest in a luxury product or a good product, but not setting it too high that when you come out of it, they're going to be like, oh, I was expecting that, but I didn't quite get.
Or you talk yourself up so much that you're never going to be able to deliver. It relies on it being the best day and the best weather with the best people.
Yeah.
But you can't promise people kind of the moon and stars when you don't always know that's the case. That's going to be the case.
Yeah.
But it's giving them setting that enough of an expectation so that they feel trusted, assured, confident that you can deliver, and then leave a few little surprises on the table to kind of take it above and beyond.
And that's what this is all about. It's about how to do that, because it's not just about what you say to the couple. It's everything from what you're doing in your website, how you speak to them in your pre-consultation calls, what films or photos are you showing on your Instagram and things like that. That's all like adjusting the couple's expectations. All of these things are adjusting their expectations.
And I think, like you've said in your thing as well, is we're going to go kind of through those section by section, but the biggest amount of expectation setting probably happens before they even book. I think kind of that's the biggest time for you to set those expectations, is kind of to eliminate any problems before you take on that couple, knowing what their day's going to be and them knowing what to expect from you. So I think most of that, like once you've got to the point of the booking, kind of that's the point where you can reaffirm those expectations throughout the journey before you get to the day, or even on the day, and the things that you say and do. But for the most part, I think that biggest learning curve or expectation setting needs to come, like I say, in all of those bits up until the booking stage.
It's like a puzzle of what people should expect, and by the time they book you, that puzzle should be complete, and that should they should have a clear picture of who you are, how you act on the day, what their final result is going to be. That kind of thing.
And so much of it, I think, is subliminal as well. Like, I'd like to think that everybody after, when you log on to this podcast, in kind of the terms of, the way that it looks, by the length of it, by the way the intro sits and the rest of it, you probably already made up a kind of expectation about if you're only listening to us, you've probably made an expectation about how we look. If you've watched us on YouTube, there's an expectation of where we are. We're not in a fancy studio, so you maybe know that it's not going to be a super formal and like kind of that kind of. And you do like there are judgments that are made by all of those things, which I think to have expectations intrinsically linked to branding as well, like that's something which is quite visual. It's not verbal at all, but it still sets an expectation.
Yeah, it's something that when you're designing your website, are you thinking, I want this to look cool? But you should also be thinking, does this meet what I'm actually going to give to the couple? And there's this like a popular phrase, which is happiness equals reality minus expectations. And it's something that we were kind of alluded to in the last episode, is that we went on a cruise. And it turned, when we got there, it wasn't a cheap cruise. And when we got there, it turns out they were charging a lot more for a lot of the things. So they get you on the boat.
There was a lot of hidden, they
get you on the boat, and then they're like, oh, by the way, if there's no iron in the room and it costs you $5 per t-shirt to iron, then you've only got, there's 7 restaurants, you only got 3 of them included, and they're basically a buffet or a sit-down version of the buffet and a pizza place. And you get on there, and not that this is, I don't think it's a bad way of doing business the way they're doing it. I just think that the expectation that I was going to have to pay extra for a lot of things wasn't there beforehand.
Or it wasn't communicated well enough.
It wasn't communicated.
You'd have to really have dug to find that information that was the case. So the kind of the advert and the expectation was set that like, we were on this massive ship with all these restaurants and all this stuff to do. And then that was probably the tiny text at the bottom that was like, extra fees may apply or whatever.
So it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. Whereas someone like EasyJet or Ryanair, the expectation is you're going to be paying for a bare seat, and everything else you're going to pay extra for, and that going into it because they openly say that they charge for everything. Like,
and I think that's it, is knowing kind of your market, isn't it, and doing that. And I think that kind of having that formula, like you said there, like happiness is not always sometimes happiness. It's people's preconceived expectations or dreams of what they want. And particularly when you liken that back to weddings, like nobody dreams of wet weather on their wedding day, or most people probably don't, or they dream that everything's going to go off completely perfectly, and they have this idea of this fairy tale in their head, and that's their like pinnacle thing. And maybe I think that's why sometimes like, people don't talk about setting expectations enough, because sometimes it can almost be the bucket of water that gets poured on the fire, can't it? Or setting those expectations can sometimes almost be the reality check to those people's dreams. And I always think of this, that I remember like, a few years ago getting an inquiry for a church wedding the week before Christmas in a city. And it's a 3 p.m. ceremony. So by the time we come out of the ceremony, it would have been dark.
It's dark,
And they actually said in the inquiry, we're looking at this, we're only looking for a little bit of coverage, and we've also attached 3 or 4 of your photos that we love the most.
I see what's going
2 of them were sunsets in cornfields. In a city wedding
in
a 3 p.m. ceremony in December. So at that point, I had to come back and say, well, I'm so glad that you resonate with my work. Thank you for your inquiry. But even at this very early stage, if you want any of this, that golden hour is going to happen bang in the middle of your ceremony. So it's going to be dark when we get out and kind of golden going in. So if you want us to get to the cornfield, that you need to be seeing each other before the ceremony and having your groups and stuff done before. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to make the work that you think I'm going to be able to make. I'm not going to fulfill your expectation or your reality when you've shown me these images and going, that's what we'd love to have in our gallery. And obviously, when they come to you, there's already certain elements of their day booked, and you can't make them change venue or change time or whatever. They've booked it for a reason. But you can only point out is how you can best fit their or what needs to happen for you to fulfill their expectation.
But in replying the way you did, you've not gone, oh yeah, that's fine. Those photos are
and
good.
I think that's it. Is in the early days, you want the booking, or you're not very good at wording that in a way that shows you, I'm experienced in this. Have you considered X, Y, and Z for you to get this? Where I know I did it early in days when someone goes, we kind of want that. Oh, you can just do that, right? And you go, yeah, all right, I'll do that. And then as soon as you walk away, going, why did I agree to this? And then you spend the day leading up to the job panicking about, I've got to learn some new skills or buy this new piece of equipment or do whatever. I'm not even sure that I can do that, but I've promised them that I would now. And then you worry so much that you're going to mess it up that you probably do a bad job overall because you're too worried about the little thing that you've agreed to do. Where if I'd have just gone, oh no, I'm really sorry, I don't do video, or oh no, sorry, I don't record that, or it's just I do this. They go, okay, great.
You've
set that expectation that, and I used to have it a lot, particularly less so now, but it'd be, "Oh, just do a bit of video as well, mate. You know, we've got just like just like the speech is captured." And it's like, but how can I photograph that and then still try and record? You know, I'm not a videographer, but in the first thing, because you're worried you're gonna lose the booking, you could go, "Oh yeah, I'll try."
Yeah. But the amount of times that you say about pouring water on the fire, the amount of times sort of during the pre-wedding call, I've had a chat with the couple and gone, okay, so what's the plans if it rains at this point? And you see their eyes go like wide, and like shit, they haven't thought of rain. They've spent their whole
because their dream of happiness is we've booked an outdoor venue in July. It will be sunny.
So you're dampening their expectation of the wedding a little bit as well, to make sure that they know that the reality of the situation is it could rain, basically. And what are your plans, so that you know where, and I think we'll go into this, you know what will happen with your venue and us in terms of photo and video if it does rain as well.
I mean, that's it. It's almost, and I'm sure we spoke about this in other episodes as well, it's like the idea, isn't it, of almost like the shit sandwich, where you need to kind of go, well, this is the problem that you're going to face. This is how I'm going to fix it. But it could end up being like this.
Yes.
And it's almost, and then it's kind of, and you know, we as photographers and videographers consider like the biggest points of our day for me is normally, say, sunset time, daylight time, ceremony time, those things.
Yeah.
And so many times I get on a client call and you say to a couple, okay, well, great. So you're getting married in June, so it doesn't matter. You're on a 1 p.m. ceremony. Sundown's not till 9. So if we work back from that, you can fit this in. And they go, we've not even considered that.
Yeah.
Or like, if I start to get weddings in the September, October time, you go, okay, as long as your pre-clock's going back, we've got time.
Yeah.
As soon as you step over that time and we lose an hour of daylight, you're this. And they go, oh, you don't consider that. Also, because all they consider about is how it's going to look and the colour of the flowers and you know, this idea of what they want, where we work in light and we need light, you know, to make certain parts of our day, or you know the challenges that it can bring if you don't have it. And so it's kind of, in some ways people see it as a bad thing, because you're almost saying, a lot of times saying no with expectations.
Yeah.
But it's also a really great way to not build up the dream of something you could never deliver for them because of science of daylight or whatever, but also you're on a kind of harnessing your sense of experience in your field of that day to tell them, okay, well, maybe we could do this. And it might be that, well, if you did this, that might make that even better, not you know, or you can elevate their expectation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Is it's about exceeding the expectation as well. So obviously it's their first time doing it, so there's a lot of ways you can exceed their expectation by not doing a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Like our package includes so from getting ready in the morning to the first dance, right? And like the amount of time it's like, oh, well, our sunset's going to be after the first dance, so it'll be a shame to see you go, but that's completely fine. We don't worry. And I say, well, actually, our package says until first dance, but really, I'll stay until sunset either way. Then and like
their faces light up.
They're like, oh, okay, that'd be really nice. Yeah, thank you for that. And you see them look at each other, and you think their expectation then has been met and exceeded.
Yeah, see, I've had that a couple of times where I'm a solo shooter, and they go, oh, we'd quite like you to like kind of get a little bit of the groom as well, but I think he's going to be here, and you go, oh, well, actually, you're getting ready to go at one venue, so he's going to rock up before the wedding anyway, so I can do a little bit of that with them. I can just pop out and they're like, oh, amazing, we've not even thought about that. So it's almost using that kind of you can use it in a plus way. Don't think that you're always going to be bringing people in.
Or even like, oh, you know, we do a pre-wedding call a month before the wedding, and we'll catch up and we'll discuss everything. Yeah. And like they might not have been told that by any other supplier yet, so you're the first person who's offered to do like a call a month before and chat to them about it. So like, because it's their first time, that's the first time they're here and that they get to do that, and it's like it's a nice little.
Yeah, I also find it interesting people that don't do final calls as well, because I think sometimes that can be a really good place to remind people of expectation, because if they have that call with you initially sort of 18 months before, then they go back to their family and friends and they do all their fun stuff, they book other suppliers, they get their dresses, speak to the venue and all that sort of stuff. It's easier to almost forget what we say then. So when they come back and go, oh, so we've been speaking to our dad, and he'd much rather speak between dessert and main and this and that, and you have to that point almost then go, oh, actually, and reaffirm that expectation at that point, even though that you're pretty close to the wedding, where you might have said, we don't advise this in the lead up, but they've forgotten because they've gone back to their families and whatever. I think that's kind of your last garrison, isn't it? Because on the day, you can't be standing there just before they're announcing to dinner going, no, you can't speak yet. I'm not doing it.
No.
It's too late by then.
You have to set the expectation on the call.
That expectation needs to be set. So I kind of think that last call, although that we've just said that most of your expectations should be set before you book, I think that final call or final questionnaire or whatever is kind of, say, your real last garrison of expectations before you just get on with the day.
And I think we've got a section about that, but I want to start with branding and your website, which I think is where the expectation starts, because generally the port of call, ignoring Instagram for a second, like your main sort of shop window and that kind of thing is your website. And so you want to start with what expectation is your brand setting. And, you know, most extreme examples, you know, are you using, are you portraying a brand that says you're going to, you know, film calm, relaxed videography, or are you more portraying a brand that has lots of transitions and things like that? Like, are you using words like luxury and elegant and timeless, or are you using words like damn cool and sexy and that, you know what I mean? Like, and so all of those different things, it's not just about you know, the films or photos that you're showing on the website. It's about your copy and the way you're portraying yourself.
But don't you think your brand as a whole is the ultimate unspoken expectation?
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
And, you know, coming off the back of us that did a workshop last week.
Yeah.
You know, that's, isn't it? That's kind of, all on branding and marketing. I think it's something that we've really kind of looked under the microscope, and all the brands that do stuff really well, that is like that you know exactly the type of people that have that thing, you know exactly what they're going to get from it. And that is kind of, like, I think kind of the most colourful and kind of, like visual version of an expectation that you can have.
100%. And I feel like that's why me and you are so adamant on branding and so on it with our branding, is that, like, what's really important to us is getting couples who value the work that we do. But in order for them to value the work that we do, their expectation has to be the same as our expectation of what we do as well.
For sure, yeah.
And that's why, branding is so important. Like, your About Me page, is it a picture of you with a cup of tea by the fire reading a book? In which case someone's going to look at you and think, oh, they're like a cozy, homely person. Or is it you with a cowboy hat in the desert, like covered in tattoos and shit? You know what I mean? Like, it's two completely different people. And so the expectation of how you're going to act on the day.
Yeah, it's not to say that there's not both facets to your personality, but it's which one do you want to portray for that particular message that you're trying to give,
and your style of photography. And
they almost need to match. It needs to be a unified message, because I think a brand which is misaligned can give such mixed messages then, which then means that you need to work even harder in clarifying that with copy or the call or like,
or your work
or whatever. It needs to kind of like down to literally. And it sounds silly, like, but you think of, if someone that makes really warm work, if your entire website is blue in color, you're counteracting that with something really kind of cool and cold. Whereas like if you work make really warm work, it doesn't work out, does it? Or if you're someone which is like super serious and like moody, and then you're like, your background of your website is yellow with purple spots. It doesn't line up.
And you got like swirly fonts and logos and things like that.
And people think, you might be listening thinking it's crazy that it's that level of things, but you do. Like if you look at a brand for the first time, you do make assumptions on how much that clothing website's going to cost. The second you land on it, by their logo, by the colours they use and the rest of it. And people will do the same with your wedding before they've even read an ounce of copy or scrolled to that second or third image in the splash. But they've already made that. You've already set that expectation there and then.
And like, again, like, we don't want to go too much into branding and website stuff, but like before the fold as well. So you have like, is it before the fold? Is that what it's called? So when you're basically what shows everything that shows before you have to scroll, isn't it? Yeah. So instantly, as soon as that loads, people are going to be judging what, like, who you are, where you are, and what you do. Basically.
And also your first impression. That's the very first expectation that is set. And if they click on your website and it takes 10 minutes to load because you've got like a 4K video there which is super long. They're bored, gone. The expectation, you don't get a chance to set the expectation.
That's why that first splash photo or video is so important as well, isn't it? And also just the way you curate your work as well. Like, your portfolio is the biggest way to set the expectation of how the work is going to look at the end of it. There's lots of other expectations that a couple will have, like the couple experience, and are you going to have a call with them, and how are you going to be on the day. But obviously their portfolio is ultimately an expectation of how things are going to look. And that it's important to curate A, what you think is your best work, but B, what you think is the work that most represents what you want to be. And the example I've used of this is for my own work, really, which is I filmed a wedding in Lake Como this year, and I wanted to put it on the homepage of the website. I was going to put it like on the front and center and whatever, because I really like it and I was proud of it and everything. But then when I was doing it, I kind of realized that although it was the coolest film maybe I'd made this year, it wasn't the film that best represented the soul and the energy that I have.
If you dive into the branding of who your demographic are, at the moment that wedding is kind of a one-off. Once you've done 6 and you are in synonymous with destination weddings more, then your branding can shift towards that. But at the moment, it would probably alienate a lot of your barn couples over here.
But because it wasn't, you're right, but because it wasn't. Like the candids weren't quite there, like it wasn't a focus on guests that my films normally are. I felt done myself a disservice compared to what I would try and show.
It wouldn't match with the when you've got like story led, moment driven. And it's
just couples on a boat in Italy somewhere. It just doesn't add up.
And I think that some of it is, whilst I would always say that your portfolio should be your best work, I think it should be your best work as a collection. And sometimes a lot of people, I think, are really, they put a lot of work in that they think people want to see. Where that's not always the case. I think is sometimes having a couple of safe photos can dilute a really strong image again, and it dilutes the message. It's kind of really dial into what do you want this collection of images to say.
100%.
And they all need to pull, although they can be visually quite different, they all need to speak the same message, don't they? Like you can't have a blurry black and white, kind of black tie wedding, and then next to it put like a really like a really colourful cravat and tailcoat swirly. Because they're two very different like weddings, aren't they? Or they're for two very different groups of people. And I think is that kind of old saying of like you can become a jack of all trades but a master of none, is that if people are really going to invest in you, they need to know exactly what they're going to get by booking you. Not we might get this or we might get that, and kind of 6 different colour grades across 6 different images or 6 different films. It's people really need to know it will, to a degree, look like this but with us in it. But then on the flip of that, but at the same time not looking like you make exactly the same work at every wedding pose for pose and you could just swap the heads on people. It is such a real kind of fine line, isn't it?
You don't want to dilute their expectation either, because like you say, some people could see some parts of your portfolio and be like, oh, those are the parts that I like, but they're never going to communicate that to you. So, if you're showing the bits that you believe that you can do at every wedding and you can achieve at every wedding, then you're more likely to set that expectation properly, where a couple is going to look at your stuff and be like, I'm getting this is the colours that I'm getting clearly, I'm going to be getting some black and white, or I'm going to be getting, I'm going to be getting a trailer with speeches in the background, because every single trailer he shows has speeches in the background, that kind of thing.
I think it's that expectation, isn't it? Is that people they need to know what they're getting without knowing that, you're just kind of cookie cutter and that you do everything. And also don't show stuff that you don't want to do more of just because you think people want to see it or you think it's cool. Like you said, it'd been really easy to slap Como at the top, but because it's a really cool film. But if you don't want to be doing multiple destination weddings every year, then you're doing yourself a disservice by showing it, even though it might be a really cool film. If you don't want more of that, even though it might be what some people would consider your best work, it also needs to be an expectation on your terms as well about what you're showing, doesn't it?
Or maybe like in my case, it's an incredible film, but it has way too much focus on the couple. Whereas that's not what I do normally. But I love it, but I don't want to make people think that's all I do.
Enough to show it as the first thing. You don't want that to be their first impression. But if you have a destination wedding page further down, that's the perfect place for it, because then you're showing it to a much more refined audience. Because then the expectation is they're expecting to get married abroad. So if you show them the rainy barn from down the road, they can't picture that in their vision of expectation, can they? Where you're making it much more easier to align you with their vision if you've got that expectation set.
By the way, the rest of the episode is a drinking game, and every time we say expectation, you have to have a shot. Not if you're in the car, though.
Not sure anyone will make it through to the end otherwise, is it?
But so to an extent as well, price is a measure of expectation, because there's going to be, and this is quite obviously opinion based one, because we've often spoken before about how let's say you're $2,000 or $2,500, there's going to be some people who are stretching to meet your budget who are going to expect a lot more from you, and there's going to be some people who to whom $2,000 is nothing, and they're probably not going to be they're not going to have as much of an expectation. They know what you are. They just do your thing, mate. I'll just slip you $2,000 and there you go.
Yeah, I think when you add money to it as well, it's people's massively expectations are different in that.
Yeah.
Like there's for all the things that you've just said as well, is that sometimes it happens the other way, where I could look at someone's website and be very much like, oh, I thought it'd be way more than that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might be a thing on that they're not charging enough, or if anything, the expectation that they're setting is that they are this kind of really kind of high-end luxury person, or I'm so impressed with the experience level they've got, or the amount of awards that they've won, that I've built the value up of them from their branding in my head, and then they go, they only charge that.
Yeah.
Whereas in other people that you kind of, that maybe haven't done such a good job of communicating it, you look at the work, oh, these are very pretty, oh, these are very nice, and then you go, I know I don't equate that value.
No.
And it might not even be the work. It might say be the branding,
the value of the
or
branding,
or the confidence in which they talk about themselves in their About Me page or something of all of that. But I think there's loads of expressions in there about things that smell like money, or that looks expensive, or that looks cheap, or whatever. And I think that's all those things as well, isn't it? And it does intrinsically come back to price. Is that if you wouldn't go and buy a bin bag that costs $5,000, would you? Because it still looks like a bin bag.
Yeah.
But it's that idea, isn't it? But people might know that that's the most luxury bin bag that you can get, but it's that perceived value, isn't it? Is if people have spent a lot of money on you, people want to feel they're getting good value, or also they want to show off to their friends and go, oh, I spent this much on this.
Yeah.
So when you rock up to their wedding, they need you to feel like you are every bit of that kind of value.
But that's why price is such a harder thing to master in terms of, if you have the most professionally slick designed website, your films are incredible, but you feel like you're maybe a bit of a martyr and you want to charge 1,500 quid, that could be a red flag for some people.
It could be,
who have got a $2,500 budget. They're like, we love these people, but for some reason they're only 1,500 quid, and they're not charging enough at that point.
People think it's too good to be true at that point. So the expectation is not there. And I think that's it. It's almost, you need to set... It is that, what are people expecting to pay by seeing this? Because that's something which there's more than an episode in itself in pricing that way and stuff like that. But I think it can say a lot. Or sometimes you get the other way and go, oh, this website looks really cheap, or the brand looks really budget. Yeah, and that can make the work. It can make the work look cheaper than it actually is. I think you could probably get the same set of images and put them on 4 different websites with 4 different values, and it's the bells and whistles around it and the copy and the colours and the rest of it that make it that or not.
It's like, what have you read going into that film? Because it's like I guess it's like the experience around the film, right? So you've come onto a website, you've seen some clips at the top of their splash page, you've seen who it is that filmed the film, and then you scroll down and then there's their best films there, and you watch that. You already know, you can picture the person behind the camera filming it. You know what their values are. They've got a dog. Oh, they filmed the couple's dog. That's because they've got a dog, because I've just seen it in the about page, and that kind of thing. And so it's as much about everything else that surrounds the film as it is about the film.
And don't you think as well, people do it, and particularly with brands or with fashion or whatever, is that you find if you get an odd wedding where the bride has an absolute killer pair of expensive shoes, they might be the first pair of Jimmys that you've ever photographed in your life, but if you're wanting to set the bar as expensive, that's the one that's going on your gram, because people think, well, if they photograph couples that can afford those shoes, well, they must be expensive. Where then you get the couple that wears their pumps from New Look or whatever, they probably don't make it to the portfolio today, and it's that expectation. But it's perfectly okay that there's, if you're photographing more alternative couples, you might have a lot more sort of Doc Martens and painted Converse on your website, where if you're going into luxury, you're looking for those brands, aren't you? And it's kind of expectation by association as well, because people already have perceived views of those brands or those whatever. You could take an awful photo of a celebrity, but a certain amount of people will still think it's cool because it's of that person, not that it's a great photo. You could take an amazing photo of a nobody and people go, oh, that's a nice photo, and take a crap photo of someone super famous, and that one will probably still get more likes.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
it's that, isn't it? It's that's kind of an expectation by nothing that you've done either. It's just kind of by the stuff in the frame.
It is a curation, isn't it? At the end of the day, and we've spoken in depth about curation. We have an episode about it somewhere, so.
I'm sure we'll do another going forward as well.
We probably will.
Once we get into the early part of next year, I think, and we're probably both refining our own folios. There's probably another one inspiration.
Changing the portfolio pages. But everything we've just spoken about as well applies to the brochure. I think a brochure gives you a bit more opportunity to go more in depth into it, because by that point someone's already a little bit invested in you. So perhaps some of the things that you might not have put on the website because of space, time, or maybe it's too in depth and you don't want, that's maybe like, at that point they don't care too much about what your favorite color is and what your favorite coffee is and whatever. But if they've invested in you already, the brochure gives you the opportunity to go a bit more in depth.
Or I think as well, particularly if you're someone that doesn't want to show your prices online, like kind of going back to pricing again, is at that point that's the real affirmation of the expectation, isn't it? The brochure. Like if people have seen the pretty website and gone, okay, let's just find out how much they are. That brochure needs to back up everything they've got so far, doesn't it? Like that's the kind of the step through the shop window of your website, and the brochure is they're in the shop, and it's your point to sell to them, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so everything in that brochure needs to hammer home the expectations for you to charge the number at the bottom of that brochure.
Yeah, it needs to break down how you're going to be on the day. It needs to break down the price strategy and the packages, and so that when they, some people I've known who have booked me, and instead of going back to Student Ninja and looking at what they've booked, they've gone back to the brochure and gone, I think I booked that package, didn't I?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Rather, because they've, some
They're
people
all
don't
like
go
that kid, when you're a kid at Christmas and you got the Argos catalogue,
circling the Argos
and you
catalogue.
circled what you wanted for Christmas, and some of it you knew your parents would never afford and it would never get you, but that was kind of your reference, is that, when it arrives and you go, oh, well, that one shows that it come with this and this because the picture says.
Yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it, how people kind of still really go back to that. And I've had that in the past where, maybe even this year where I was a little bit slower on sending out my USB boxes that follow up the online gallery, and people go, oh, well, I've just checked, and it does say on our quote that you did promise this, and it's like, yeah, don't worry, it's coming. And it's almost like that's there because you've listed these things, that is their expectation. It's like, well, we are going to get this.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good opportunity to do that. And then I put FAQs as well. I think FAQs are a cheat sheet for expectation, because they're FAQs for a reason, right? They're questions that people ask that are easily answerable to everybody, but normally, basically, right? So, for example, like, how long do you stay on a wedding day? Boom. Like, there's people that ask that, and there's people that forget to ask that and expect you to stay longer. So, if you find that people are asking a certain question a lot, you can then put that into your FAQs, and so that covers you for the people that will not think of that question and then on the day be like, oh, but I thought you did this, or afterwards so we messaged you like, okay, so we'd like this song and this song. You didn't. No, I picked the music, but I never told you that.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think the FAQs are a great place to kind of hide is the wrong word, but house all of maybe some of those more negative, those areas of expectation where you are saying, no, sorry, I don't use Ed Sheeran over that thing, even if it was your first answer, or no, I don't stay till the very last song and do this. You wouldn't want to put that in your copy because it seems really negative.
Yeah.
But people still need that information. But to have it in kind of neat little drop downs or on one page, where that kind of refines all that expectation or all the assumptions they've made from your portfolio and your brand and the rest of it, that is kind of the rain check point, isn't it, having the FAQs? But you can have it in one little neat page where they only go to it if they really have that burning question or whatever, and that kind of is a way to kind of it's a nice little box to kind of hide some of those more negative ones in, but also if they don't look at it and then it comes down later on, at least you've got somewhere to kind of, without going, as per my contract, it's in a very public place to go, well, actually in my FAQs I do outline this, and it's a really handy thing to have to cover yourself in maybe some of those more heady expectations that people have about their days.
That's it. And we didn't cover this bit in the intro because I completely forgot about it, but like we were going to say, and I was going to say that like most of like the disagreements I've had with couples have been because of setting expectations. Whether that's me setting an expectation or them having an unrealistic expectation is a different story. But I often talk about the biggest disagreement I had with a couple many years ago or a few years ago, where the couple expected the full uncut ceremony to be from the moment the first guest walks in the church to the moment the last guest walks out, a completely uncut multicam of all of that. And for me, and for everyone I've spoken to be quite honest, it's going to be from walking down the aisle, right, until like the first kiss, or even until they walk back down the aisle. But they had this expectation that was set, and now that's outlined, which we'll get into in the contract.
Yes.
And so it's those little things where it's all come down to, rather than style or the film's not made properly or you've missed something, it's all come down to, the couple expected this but didn't get it, or got this instead.
Yeah, and something's obviously given them a reason to think that was the case. And although it sometimes may seem really obvious that you need to state these things, and I feel that, and that goes back to, I think, to a kind of a mindset thing, is that, you know, I've had it. If someone asks, if you get that question once, it's probably a coincidence.
Yeah.
But if you get different couples asking you the same question, the chances are it means that you haven't communicated that well enough.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting chased lots for, my photo's ready yet? My photo's ready yet? It means that you're not communicating how long it's going to take for them to get their photos back, or you haven't got a tracker, or you haven't told them it will be 6 weeks, or whatever it is. So again, it's that level, and that's just an example, isn't it? But that was one, I think, that I got to a point where, you know, where I had 2 or 3 people going, "Oh, I'm not rushing you, but just checking in when we can expect them."
Yeah.
So now again, it's listed in my contract, it's listed on my website. That's the reason that I put the edit queue up on my stories, is to kind of harness that expectation of people knowing where they are on my edit pile and how long this stuff takes.
Yeah.
So it's not 2 weeks after the wedding and them going, "Oh, just checking in." Like, "Oh, have you got it?" It's like, if 3 people are asking you, then it's not a them problem. It's probably a you problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's why the FAQs are great as well. And going off the basis of that, the consult call as well. So or the consultation call, or pre-booking call, whatever you want to call it, that is, you know, by that point, an expectation should have already been built up. I find that my consultation calls or pre-booking calls are very quick, and there's not a lot of questions from the couple, purely because I think I do a good job at having everything answered before they even jump on the call. And the call is the formality of, okay, you need to see me in my face, and I need to talk to you for a little bit, and then you decide if you still like me, and then book me, and then the other way around as well.
It's very much a personality based thing. In stuff that you can't communicate, it's just to get them in front of you. And a lot of times I probably have more questions for them about what's your expectation of me on the day. Like, again, oh, hi guys, what do you do? So I can get a feel for them as people. But then I always make sure at the end of a call, I always say, okay, so, you know, I'm sure you've had a good look through the website, but have you got any burning questions, you know, which kind of really matter to you before we go any further with this? And it might just be and it might be something which is covered in the FAQs. I'd never be that kind of, well, that's actually all covered, I would answer it. But it's nice to give them an opportunity, because if that's something which pops up and that's the first question they ask, you can normally tell what's on their mind or what's important to them.
Yes. Yeah.
In that, because that's the first thing they've asked. If the first thing is, oh, what happens if it rains? They're probably clearly worried about the weather on their day, and so you know how to reassure them. Or is well, how many photos exactly will we get? You know that might be, you know, so I always kind of make sure that I end my calls with that, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
So there is kind of that verbal kind of, you've given them that chance to ask something that might not be covered, or reaffirm something that maybe you haven't worded as well enough on their website, or on your website it says this, but can you explain actually what that physically means?
It's also a good opportunity to try and figure out couples' expectations that they maybe don't even know that they have. So for example, like, obviously you ask them questions about, you know, what they do. You probably see that they've got pets there. Ask if the pet's going to be at the wedding, and what role the dog's going to have. And also things like, you know, we often talk to them about the venue, and like, oh, so why did you choose this venue in particular? And then you sort of find out that other venues they picked, and get a pattern,
or why they didn't like other venues, so you know what things not to lean into. And then, like, there might be a venue you do quite a lot, and you film it in a certain way, but I've never really thought about one particular thing, and the couple goes, oh yeah, we picked this venue because we really like the bright red bridge that's out the back of it or something, and you think, okay, I wouldn't have normally filmed that, so let's probably put that in to make sure I get that. I had a final call last night with a couple whose wedding I'm shooting next week, and so, you know, we had our final call, went through timings and stuff like that, and, you know, again, had our kind of catch up, and I said to them at the end, oh, is there any last little bits that you kind of, that anything you feel that you want to tell me or include? And then they said to me at that point, then they were like, yeah, like, we picked you because we really like your style. We really, you know, this is, you know, we're both the last siblings in our families to get married, so it is probably going to be a really big family occasion. You know, and we'll be really honest, we're not really interested in pictures of stuff. So it's like, don't feel the need that I don't really want the picture of my shoes. I don't feel the need that you have to get the picture of the dress hanging up. I don't care. She's like, all we want is pictures of our family coming together and having a nice time. And so, in some ways, they've set that expectation for me that I don't need to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to waste time on the day bothering to do a detail shot because she doesn't want it.
Yeah.
And there's, then you can go on forever. Well, she thinks she doesn't want it now, and there's a fine line. But if they said to them that, she set that expectation with me is that all you need to make me happy is some amazing photos of my family coming together and having a nice time.
Yeah.
Is that's what I've got to do, and I'll keep that in the forefront of my mind when I'm shooting their wedding. There won't be actually, like, she's put her bouquet down on the side over there, but it's in really nice light.
Yeah.
Like, I might grab it anyway, but I wouldn't take time to really focus in on those than the lady that goes, I've bought these really, really expensive shoes. Can you make sure you get some amazing shots of the shoes because they're the biggest splurge on my wedding day?
Oh, by the way, Tom, all my details are over in the corner there if you want to go and grab them and that kind of thing.
Yeah. The people that purposely leave the invite on the side so you get the flat lay.
Yeah.
Like, and you can tell, again, that they leave it with their staff. The expectation is they want you to shoot it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's everything comes back to kind of maybe more subliminal, but it's still that expectation there by them doing that.
Equally, a question I always ask is like, what made you stop on our work, or what are you looking for, and sometimes even what are you looking for in a videographer? And some people will say things that strike up an expectation red flag in my mind, like why'd you stop on our work? I really love the shots that you do of like the dress hanging and the shoes and things like that. And at that point I then step in and go, I don't do that at every wedding, just to let you know. So if you do want that, because I'm happy to do it, if you do want that, you're going to need to tell me in the pre-wedding call or now that's a non-negotiable. Because sometimes, like, I expect them to go, oh yeah, like your energy and the vibrancy and everything. And sometimes they'll go, oh yeah, those detail shots are really good. Or, those couple shots are really, and I'm like, well, those are good. Yes, you're right. But they're not necessarily the crux of what I do. So just to set that expectation, if you want, and sometimes people have even gone, oh, I love your trailers, but I don't really like that as speeches or ceremony in them. So I want them without. And I'm like, well, again, that's something you're going to have to tell me before so that we can set that expectation of this is what you're going to get, a music video, basically. I
always find as well, there's sometimes, and it's our fault as well, like particularly because a lot of my work comes from word of mouth, is expectation by assumption.
Yeah.
Like, say you shoot a wedding for a couple and then the bridesmaid gets in touch 6 months later and goes, we're engaged now. We're getting married, and you naturally assume that their wedding day is going to be like their mate's wedding day because they're friends, and you think they're naturally always going to be into the same things, and if that one's a great party, it means that one's going to be a great party too.
Yeah.
And it might not happen. That might be her really cool extroverted friend, and she actually might be quite quiet. And so it's almost saying, okay, I know that you found me through these guys, but what is your vision for the day? You can't just set the expectation that their day will be as good as or on the same vibe as the one that the job recommended from. So a lot of times I was kind of, if people just say, recommendation, I'll say to them, okay, so who recommended you? And then kind of piece that together to kind of get that. So I'm not naturally assuming that, it must have come from this or it must have come from that. And kind of, making that trail back to kind of the source. And okay, so is your wedding going to be like that, or is it, But
often they will be very different because different family, different friends. Like I've done a bridesmaid this year for a wedding that I did her friend like a couple of years ago, and it was a totally different vibe of wedding, like a completely different day because they had different families, like different priorities at the time and things like that.
But it's really easy in your mind, isn't it, to just go, that one was a great party, so this one's going to be too because they're friends.
Yeah.
And it's not. When you break it down, it's quite a silly assumption, but it's still normally an expectation that I, some reason, still seem to connect in my head because that's the only connection at that point I know of them.
Yeah.
That's what I've got to go on. And so it's almost their job or my job to find out whether that's the case or not.
Yeah. So in a way, that the pre-wedding call then is also about the pre-booking call is about our expectation of their wedding as well, and what we are to expect from their day.
Yeah, because sometimes even some people leave 2 lines in an inquiry and some people leave 2 pages.
Yeah.
And that sets an expectation in how, if they don't give a lot, it can leave quite a lot to the imagination, can't it? And if they just go, we're getting married at X venue on this day, you just have already a pre-built assumption if you've been to that venue before of, okay, it'll be like this because it's that venue on that day. Well, they might be having something really different planned there, but you only kind of naturally, I think, it's that kind of, we've all got that slightly sort of like stereotypical idea in our head, haven't we? That
a couple
you're always based on previous experience. So it's kind of, it's allowing yourself to escape from that and letting them set the expectation rather than previous weddings. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next thing is like obviously when they go to book, then I've put like the contract, and I very much use my contract as the final sort of expectation. Like you said that the FAQs are a way to hide everything that like all those bits that you might not want to say. Yeah. The contract is definitely that next level for me.
That's the binding expectation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's binding, but I always say to couples, because I know my contract is like pretty airtight and also very, very detailed and covers like a lot of scenarios. I say to couples that I know that it's tempting just to tick the contract and sign it and whatever, but please read it all the way through, because it might answer questions that perhaps aren't as detailed in the FAQs or that we've not gone through here. Like, you know, what happens if somebody cancels? What happens if you get ill? What happens if I get ill? What happens if someone knocks over my camera during the ceremony? You know, and or there's a change of schedule on the day, and who, you know, who chooses the music? All of that kind of stuff. There's all of that is in the contract.
Which is really into the weeds sort of stuff, isn't it? It's really in detailed stuff that at a booking stage almost in the end might put people off, or it's too much detail than what they need in that initial stage. But when you are right down to that point where this is the document which is going to protect both of you in that booking, I think it has to be that level of detail, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And that's why it's all about like protecting them as well, because it's like, what happens if I get ill? Oh, don't worry, like if we get ill, it doesn't automatically get cancelled, or you don't get your money back, but we'll secure somebody who we know can, and
particularly where adversity is involved. I think people like certainty in that. They like things to be very black and white in those scenarios. They know if they cancel at this amount of time before the wedding, how much it's going to cost them. Or if you cancel on them, they need to know that there's it's almost like an insurance terms and conditions, isn't it? Is that it's that faces on all the probably the most worst case scenario things at their wedding. So you don't want to really spend the time on the call talking about that, because it brings the mood down.
It's not the glamorous thing,
but it still needs somewhere which is it's covered. And I think anybody that's spending the amount of money that they are on probably us wants that level of reassurance that all of that stuff has been thought about and there's a policy in place. Yeah,
up until that point you've set like an expectation, but you've kept it light-hearted and glamorous, but this is the point where like it does protect you legally and bindingly,
and really getting down to the point where it explicitly outlines this will happen, it will cost you this, we do this. Like there's no left to chance, no fluffy copy in there. It is, like you say, it's legally binding, it's written by a solicitor. So if in very worst case scenario that expectation slips so much that a couple do turn nasty, like your ceremony couple, and go, well, we wanted it to be this. It's like, well, unless you explicitly stated that, you know, and had the contract amended, this is what you get. We are covered, type thing. So it means then that expectation doesn't get into a point where it becomes a lawsuit.
And my contract covers everything. The contract I've got currently covers everything that I've had issues with in the past, everything that other videographers I know have had issues with in the past, because I've literally gone up to solicitor and gone, write me something that covers for all of these different things.
And I would say that my contract started off much shorter than it is now, and most of the things that have been added to my contract along the way have only been added because of maybe bits where expectations have fallen short, or things that I never thought would be an issue have become an issue, and so then it's been covered in the contract to cover me and them for it.
100%, and you'll always keep adding things and sort of altering things as well, especially as extra things start to come up, like photographers doing video and content creation. And I know a lot of videographers have the whole like, you know, I'll be the only person doing filming on the day, and then now content creators have come up. You can't really say that anymore because you're not going to tell them to go home, are you? So I got my contract written by a solicitor. I also sell it as well, so if you're interested in having a look at that, then just drop me a message and I'll send you a link to the page where I sell the contract.
It's not exciting stuff, is it? Or stuff that you want to be spending a long time on, but to have the reassurance that, you know, if someone does come back to you, okay, well, this has been written by a professional. It's not a ChatGPT copy and paste jobby. It's not something which you've, you know, kind of just put fancy language in and written it yourself. It is really covered, and I think as well, you know, for what is a really affordable price for the amount of cover that it gives you. So definitely, if you're new and you're looking for a contract, or you're worried that yours isn't as detailed as it needs to be, then definitely jump onto your shop and
and it's not just written by a solicitor either. It's like having the one-to-one information from the solicitor. So it comes with a guide. It comes
with an FAQ, funny enough. So that attached to it, so it kind of lays out those really formal points in kind of layman's terms, or normal speak.
So you know,
and
says exactly what you are covered for. And you know, some points may look like you're covered, but then the solicitor has gone, look, if this did go further, you know, you would need to explain why you deserve to have this point covered. Does that make sense? So it's always nice to know that like bits of the contract, you know, while you might say, 0% refunds if this happens, it's not legal to have that. So in the guide, it's all written exactly why each point is written the way it's written. And so if anyone ever questions your contract, you can stand by it saying like, look, the solicitor that, you know, said this basically. So we should probably do one for photo at some point as well and alter it for photo, because that'd be quite nice.
I think it'd be quite easy, quite an easy thing to do. And if anything, there's probably a few different bits, but probably a lot of the really big stuff when it comes down to music and things like that, I don't apply for photo. So there's probably it's probably, if anything, over compensating already, and it'd be quite easy to make it a photo. For sure.
Amazing. So last thing then, pre-wedding is the pre-wedding call. Obviously that's a big opportunity then it's your last point of contact. So at that point I am defining the on the day experience. So where I'm going to be at what point during the day. I say to them that the reason I literally go through the timings so meticulously so that I can tell them, look, at this time exactly, I'll be leaving you and going to the groom. So nothing at your point is going to be captured at that time, because I'll be away capturing the groom, getting ready if I'm solo, and that kind of thing. And that, or, you know, at least this amount of time before the ceremony, I need to be getting to the ceremony area to set up. That is non-negotiable if you're, you know, X amount of miles away from the ceremony venue.
I think it's, a lot of it's, again, just reminding it, because I know obviously I send a final questionnaire before we have the final call, and that even has kind of little notes along the way. So it says, you know, do you have the address for your morning preparations? And then in the kind of, you know, the text underneath, it says, Tom, on a standard full day, Tom always arrives 3 hours before the ceremony time before starting, but this may flex depending on how far away your location is from the ceremony venue, or if you're all in one, etc. So, but then most of my couples probably don't sit and do the maths and go, okay, so I'm getting married at 1, so that means Tom will probably be here at 10. So then when it gets on the call, we can almost play the day out. Okay, so if you'll get married at that time, I know that you'll get married on site, so I only need to be there at this time. Where if they were half an hour's drive away, it might be, okay, well, I know I said 3 hours, but it might actually be 3.5 because of travel, and you're really, like you say, and my time I see my kind of couples there with a little a little notebook and kind of go, so they make a note of, he's going to arrive at this time, or they go, that's really great because our makeup artist arrived at this time, and they start to pull everything together in that call as well, don't they?
They do. And they've put so many people that sometimes they'll just forget their FAQs and the things that you've told them previously.
They've signed so many contracts and with so many FAQs, and they go, is it you that arrives 2 hours, or is it the the video guy that arrives 3 hours? And it's
the amount of times that I say I arrive 3 hours before the ceremony, and the amount of times I've been given like a 7 a.m. wake up, have breakfast, and like first bridesmaids gets ready 7:30, and you just kind of like, why are they giving me this information? And you kind of have to get back on the call and say, so we start 3 hours before the ceremony, and just watch them as they go, and then just remember that they
in the end, or if you've seen that schedule and there's a potential hazard in there for you to go, okay, well, I've seen the time schedule that you've attached to the questionnaire, and if you've got bride hair and makeup in first and all your bridesmaids after you, you know, do you realise that I will arrive and you'll be fully made up? So if you want some hair and makeup, you might need to switch, you know, that order around, or has it been done a particular way for what reason? And to kind of again offer that expectation is that you can't want hair and makeup shots in your video if you're going to get married, you're going to get ready 2 hours before I get there.
That's happened more and more this year, I think, is where I've turned up and the bride's already pretty much ready. I'm kind of like, I don't really know what to do, because like, yes, I can capture natural moments. At that point the bride's just sat on the sofa just having a drink.
In terms of, I find it struggle with photo, but in video even more, like in terms of, again, like storytelling, I mean, that's something we say a lot, is that surely that for that morning part, it's that idea of a journey, isn't it? Is you see someone like transform from like normal person into, you know, wedding person, and then obviously into the day itself. And then if you kind of ride up and they're half wedding person already, you kind of lose that sense of build up and transformation that is there if you have the kind of those little bits of hair and makeup, don't you? The whole
start to finish element of it.
I still find, although it doesn't make up probably a huge number of photos in my gallery, it's still a vital part of prep, I think, in that terms of telling the morning story. Much more than a group of bridesmaids or groomsmen just sat around on chairs laughing and joking and cheersing.
Having a chat. While that is like actually happening on the morning, often it's less interesting for everybody, really, isn't it? And obviously, like for photo and video, we have different pain points. So like I call the pain points a ceremony and the speeches. For video, for photo, it's probably your group shots. So you're going to be setting expectations about, for ceremony, for video, it's like how long you need to set up and things like that, who needs to be mic'd up. You need to tell me who's doing the readings beforehand, and set them up for those kind of things. And I guess for photo, it's more like, we'll find a location to do the photos. If it's raining, we'll have to do it here.
And I find sometimes I over-educate myself. I always still ask, okay, in speeches, who is speaking? Just so I kind of roughly know as I'm going through the day then, okay, well, today it's not the father of the bride that's speaking, it's actually like the brother. And so he's, so you're kind of you're making your life easier where I don't need to mic them up or particularly mind what they're saying. Or in a ceremony, I go, oh, you're doing your own vows? Just so I know that I kind of over-educate myself as I can for them to embellish as much of the information on me as they can.
Yeah.
But also I kind of feel I go into the day more prepared than I need to be. So there's no room for me to be caught out or get to the day and the videographer goes, oh yeah, I've not told you this is happening. And you go, no. Where you kind of feel that you're the most clued up that you can be.
Over prepared. That is
exactly.
And obviously this isn't about being prepared, but if you're prepared, you can set the expectation for the couple as to where you'll be and how you're going to capture what it is.
Or sometimes you need to adapt the way that you normally do things to fulfill the expectation of what they've got. Like, so I know, for example, if like my couple say to me, like most time in a ceremony, I'm stood next to the registrar, behind the registrar, shooting the couple with their guests behind them. But then if they say to me, oh, we've got this really cool, like, we're going to have fireworks explode as we do our first kiss.
Yeah.
I know I need to be at the back of the aisle for that to get that reaction or whatever. And I wouldn't have known that unless they've told me. And so sometimes something quite little like that can actually change the way out of your normal routine to adapt to what
what they've got planned. Yeah. And also, at the end of the call, I generally ask the couple just to give me a few moments that are really important, or a few things that are really important to them. My actual wording is, I don't promise any kind of specific shot throughout the day, but is there any shot that you imagined in your film that you would quite like in it if possible?
Yeah, if there was one thing that you would really like me not to miss.
Yeah. And that is immediately making them think of the expectation that they have. Because I say, like, you've probably seen other films. Is there anything in those films that you've seen and you go, oh, I quite like that, or anything like that? And immediately you're extracting their expectation. And
I do find I really play that back in my head. Like, we did a wedding, didn't we, on Easter this year together, where obviously I only took the booking from the couple because they were sadly let down by their photographer, about 3 or 4 weeks before the wedding?
Yeah.
So kind of our pre-call and our final call were pretty much all in one.
Yeah.
And they made it really quite clear that they were both very much family-orientated people, had quite big families.
Yeah.
And the coming together of their families was the most important thing to their wedding, above and beyond a lot of the other things that you kind of think might be. And so because I hadn't had that time to build a relationship with them that I have with a lot of my other couples, I found myself sometimes in moments going, oh, I'm second guessing this. Do I want to that? Do I want to lean into that? And I really found that those words in my head going, all I need to do to make them happy is photograph the families coming together.
Yeah.
So if the couple shoot wasn't quite as long as I wanted it to be, or I didn't quite get this bit, as long as there was enough pictures of them and their families and this and that, I knew that there was enough, I had enough there, or I could make a gallery from it that would really, really please them.
Yeah.
Because they'd flagged to me that was the most important of their day. Where from the outside, if you just turned up and did it, you wouldn't know that. Or sometimes you do need particular family dynamics explaining to you to go, okay, gee, oh well, this is my dad, but maybe it wasn't him that brought me up. I'm closer to my stepdad, so if he's going to be doing these bits, and so don't feel the need to focus on my relationship with him more than and kind of those things, or oh, I'm really not close to this person or whatever. And I think it's like that, having that as like a closing thing, it goes back to them setting their expectation to you as. It makes it a really easy way for how to make them happy.
And equally, if you turn up and you say, or turn up to the call and you say, this is what I captured, this is what I record, that's it, job done.
Yeah.
Like you're not showing a level of flexibility. And again, you might already be cutting off an expectation that they had at that point before they've even received anything.
Particularly with evening things.
Yeah.
If you've explained to them quite explicitly, or they've only paid you for a set amount of hours, and you go, well, say up 2 or 3 songs after the first dance, I will be leaving, or then they go, oh well, actually the best man's told us that he's got a surprise for us in the evening. Like he's going to be busting this out like
it's fireworks at 10:30
with the second with the second DJs, the second band set, and you go, well, I'm really sorry, but we've arranged that I'll be long gone by then.
Yeah.
That's like kind of again that last garrison for then when the film comes back and go, well, where are the fireworks?
Yeah.
And you go, well, I left an hour ago.
Yeah.
Again, it's not there, is it? So at that point, that's their last point to kind of because again, these things get sprung on them or whatever. So it's
they don't know what
it's a good way for them
forgotten.
to amend coverage if they need to, or even move stuff back. Like I've had couples, particularly in winter weddings, go, "Oh, we've put sparklers in the evening because it needs to be dark," and it's like, no, you could easily have those
earlier on,
earlier on. And we're not just saying that because I want to get down the road, but I want to capture them for you and make it the best that you can. And sometimes I've found that I end up having kind of tweaking people's timelines or shuffling things about because they've done what they think is best. But then we know the expectation of that I could still do that, but make it so much better if we just switched A with B.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, jet lag's kicking in now.
It's kicking in now. Second episode of the day.
But yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everything there.
I think
in terms of like before the wedding, setting the expectation in your website, your brochure, your contract, your calls. And by that point, you should know what your couples want.
Yeah.
And they should be expecting a realistic product from you.
Yes.
What product are you delivering? What are you going to be like on the day? And what is what is their client experience going to be like? That should be all set out by that point.
And I think arguably as well is particularly something that you do really well is that your last kind of barrier of expectation is the tracker.
Oh yeah, the tracker. Yeah.
I think the tracker, once you've shot the wedding, again, and most of my couples are probably too drunk or a nice time to realise, but I always feel that I always have to say bye to a couple.
Yeah.
So that they, again, there's none of that, oh, did you not capture that? I always go up to them, one, because I want to, give them a hug, say thank you for having me and this and the rest of it. And it's almost like a kind of visual cue that I'm going now.
Yeah.
Nothing after this won't be captured. And I always say to them, keep an eye on your email tomorrow, there will be previews coming. So I'm setting that expectation that even if they're at the airport, they'll probably check their email to get the previews. It won't sit in their I've not stayed up late to make these previews, and it's going to sit in their inbox for a week. Or they might go, do you know what, Tom? Don't rush to do them because we've got X, Y, and X happening. We're not even going to be able to look at our previews for 3 days. There's no point me staying up to do them that next night.
Yeah.
So that's kind of there. And then obviously you've got the edit tracker so that at any point if they're sitting there wondering, going, I wonder where our film's getting on. I wonder how long it's going to be until that arrives. Like, oh, it's Auntie Nora's birthday next week and the family are coming together.
Yeah.
It'd be really nice for us to sit and all watch the wedding film as a family.
Yeah.
And then they check the tracker and find out you've culled the ceremony and that's it.
Yeah.
But so that I think is a really good way of probably eliminating that expectation that their film will be ready longer or sooner than it could be.
Yeah, it has estimated wait time and they can see where they are in the queue, and it just it eliminates that whole guessing game basically. They can see when their film is estimated to come, and where I don't promise anything, I think that's the best way of keeping that expectation.
Yeah, you're not setting yourself up to fail by delivering a deadline which might not be achievable.
Yeah.
And then you're not seen to be falling short of that expectation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I feel like I want to say expectation lots and lots now. So if people are playing the drinking game, we can just finish the morphing round.
Expectation. And now you're steaming.
You're welcome. Amazing. So I think that's probably a really good place to leave it. I think hopefully we fulfilled the expectation of this episode with everybody. And then we'll be back with one more episode, won't we, in a couple of weeks' time, before our last episode of the year, which will be our year in review.
Our year in review, yeah, which hopefully is a bit more positive than our last year's one.
I'm hoping so, yeah. I think it will be. I really think it will be.
So
we'll come back with a really nice topic for you next time, and then obviously leading into maybe actually the Christmas tree might be up next time we record.
Oh, that's exciting.
Here's the last time.
Christmas tree episode.
Yeah, maybe have a little couple of festive episodes. Yeah, it's got to be done. Yeah,
lovely.
amazing.
Right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll
see you next one.